Hey, it's Nick, and it's Jay, and it's Lemon's World for our next installment in our crazy engine swap Lemons Geo Metro series. Of course, you can click on our channel to view the other episodes. We're going to take a look at Team Knox Vegas Lowballers.
So the team captain here is Gary Mitchell, and he, as a kid, was totally enamored of the Festiva Shogun. And if you don't remember or you didn't see all the Jay Leno stuff around the Shogun, this is a Festiva with a Taurus SHO mid-engine, kind of a la Renault 5 Turbo and Turbo 2, but done super cool. And then one day, Gary saw the Met Show, which is a Lemons car that we just profiled earlier, and he said, you know what? I can do that.
Yeah, and for the record, most people would see that car and think, I'm glad somebody else did that.
Yeah, so now to properly build a vehicle that fits into this whole kind of Shogun, Met Show, R5 Turbo 2 family, the formula is actually pretty simple. MG, what was that thing called? The 2R?
MG Metro 6R4.
It's got to be mid-engine, it's got to be based on a dinky little Econobox, and it has to not be an MG Metro 6R4.
Yeah, it can't be a factory Group B rally car MG Metro, but what it can be is a completely not race version at all, Geo Metro. And fortunately for the Knox Vegas Lowballers, near to where they're based, there was a Metro hoarder who had a Metro shell for $150.
Yeah, so this was the long wheelbase luxury 5-door version. Originally came with the small block 3-cylinder engine. I think the original price on this vehicle was almost $7,000, $69.95. They got it for $150, which is, the 2% of manufacturer discount, which is basically like buying a 3-year-old BMW 7 Series.
Shut up and take my money.
Okay, so they bought this Metro for $150. They've got the comically small hatchback part of the equation. Now they need a big old engine to put in the back seat. And so their strategy was to buy an entire donor car that had as many transferable components as possible. The engine, the transmission, subframe, wiring, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so they searched for something that was front-wheel drive, which of course makes the mid-engine conversion easier. And then you just put the subframe in the back and you put a manual transmission and linkage in. All you need is something that's relatively cheap, front-wheel drive, manual transmission, kind of sporty, right? So, Civic?
Better than a Civic.
Acura RSX.
Better.
I don't know. I give up.
Ford Contour SVT.
Okay. That is actually somewhat debatable. The Contour SVT.
So, they've got themselves a Ford Contour SVT. They found one on Craigslist a few hours away, and they were able to talk their significant others into taking the trip as long as it included a stop at IKEA.
Hey, Dana. I've got you on my radar.
Oh my god.
You just think you're smarter than me.
Oh man, it has tribal graphics?
Yep, and it's got remnants of a previously installed nitrous system. That's not even the best part. The car wasn't running, and it turned out that the previous owner had custom installed a valve cover from a different engine. Why? Because the custom valve cover looked cool.
Okay, I already see where this is going, and you are now going to tell me that the custom valve cover killed the entire engine.
Yes, yes, yes!
Yes, it did. It turns out the valve cover didn't quite fit the cylinder head. One of the ends of the camshaft was sticking out a little too far, so he did what any experienced mechanic would do. He took a Sawzall and he cut off the end of the camshaft. Now, it turns out that the end of the camshaft has a little pulley on it that drives the water pump.
Whoopsie daisy!
Okay, so not surprisingly, the engine had a lifespan of a couple of minutes and then it totally melted.
Yep, and according to the team captain Gary, he said, quote, "We've learned that every Contour SVT in existence is Subaru WRX level dicked with."
Mm-hmm, that's right.
All right, so they got a donor car, they got everything now but the engine, which is not a very big deal. The Duratec motor and the SVT, that was in like millions of cars. So they just went out, they found a 2000 model year Taurus. That's going to be their donor.
Yeah, they got the Taurus motor, and they're still using the transmission and front subframe from the Contour. They stuck all of these components in Gary's single bay basement garage. They cut a big giant hole in the rear passenger area where the engine's going to go, and they installed the engine through the back side door.
Yeah, so like the other Geo builds in this series, there's no off-the-shelf parts on this swap, and the team is generally a bunch of cheap asses, so a bunch of fabrication, most of which is learned on the fly, was required to make this thing work, and it's all tied up with random junkyard parts.
So it's got the contour subframe in the back. They bought another contour subframe to use in the front. That way it uses the same brakes, hubs, struts, all of the components on the front and the rear, which makes some of those spare parts a little easier.
So now these guys are actually kind of smart. Their general build strategy was, and I think every team probably ought to do this, instead of upgrading or going super racy, they just go to the junkyard and you grab OEM stuff from a bigger car. And if that turns out not to be enough, then you get one from a different car. And if the brakes aren't big enough, you get one from a heavier car. All stock, all OE stuff, just beefier.
Up front, where the engine used to be, you've got your radiator, obviously a stock one from a bigger car, and a racing fuel cell. To connect it all, they used tubing salvaged from a wakeboard tower for all of the coolant lines.
And then once they got the whole thing together, they realized, well, they've got this other challenge, which is one of their team drivers is 6'7", and they had to re-engineer all the safety stuff in the cage to get the proper clearance for that guy.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a team member who's 6'7", I mean, your first car option really is going to be a Geo Metro.
Erroneous! Erroneous!
Now, so the tall cage inspired their first theme, which was Jurassic Park, because they already had this vaguely safari Jeep thing sticking out of the roof.
Yeah, and we've said it a million times, the teams that do the craziest builds, they're the ones that don't really need a theme, but they're often the ones that do great themes anyway.
So they correctly expected they were going to have teething problems with this thing, and they did, but these guys, they planned ahead for it. The entire body comes off with like 4 bolts.
Now, Jurassic Park was the first of many great themes for Knox Vegas. It was followed by Snowman Semi-Truck from Smokey and the Bandit. That theme also incorporated great driver costumes.
Yeah, and then they went with the Happy Toys truck for Maximum Overdrive.
Then they had a 70s custom van theme.
They had a Ken Block Monster Energy theme.
They did Dale's Dead Bug from King of the Hill.
And they did Baywatch complete with excellent slow motion arrival to tech.
So no matter how this car is dressed up, it looks amazing. How does it perform?
Well, like all of the other Geos in this series, the tuning, the geometry, the suspension setup, all of that was a lot of trial and error, involved a lot of spinning and a fair amount of crashing, but they did eventually get it hooked up, part of which was figuring out how to get the ABS to work again, pirating a Miata controller on top of the system.
Yeah, and that system worked amazingly, although I will say that the ABS might catch the pro driver off guard, as this team learned when they tossed the keys to Randy Popst.
And I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna hit the wall. This guy's
But in general, I think Randy was pretty impressed.
The grip is tremendous. I like the shock camping. The downforce is working. Really working. So in the fast corners, like I said, it is so fast.
Like many of the other Geos in this series, when it works, it's fast. Team Captain Gary says it's like driving in Gran Turismo with the opponent difficulty set to 75%.
Now, what's really amazing is that this Geo is not, by a long shot, the only thing in the Knox Vegas stable.
Nope, they've got a twin-engine Duratec swapped Mazda MPV, which we might have to profile separately on Lemon's World.
And they've got a 65 Mustang, which is actually a Contour with homemade first-generation Mustang body panels on it.
And they've done the Lemons Rally in a Mercedes 450 SL. They completed the week-long Moscow to Paris rally, which ends at the Lemons race at Barber. And then they raced the Mercedes in the Lemons race at Barber.
And on one of those rallies, they also bought the Roadkill Missing Link shortened Lincoln, and then threw a giant supercharger on it, put a cage in it, and raced that too.
And this all goes to show you, once again, on the one hand, in Lemons, you've got a team that's got a single BMW, can't figure out how to put together an interesting theme. And then you've got these guys who have built multiple cars with both incredible mechanicals and themes.
Well, that's the way it is. The world is full of winners, and it's full of losers.
What? Hello?
If you want to see more about Geo Metros anyway, go browse through our channel, and if you just want to be annoyed, subscribe.